So average customer satisfaction scores, it hides the truth sometimes about service quality. So if you break it down, and what I want to show is maybe some of the blind spots that you're not measuring. And so I want to show you how to create this chart here with a benchmark, and then a certain number, then this type of heat map is better. So let's get started. So what we have here is we have a data set, essentially the response flag, meaning did you get the score? And it's pretty straightforward. If you ever needed to create this, it's just, if there's a value here, then true, otherwise false. Like say, for example, there's a 0 here. It's saying the average here is 2, right? 4 plus 0 divided by 2. But in reality, you didn't collect the data. So I removed the zeros from here, but it's better if you have a column that shows true or false. Okay, so if you want to get the month here, you use the text function. And so I've already done all this so I could show you the completed solution at the beginning of this video. But equals text, and then go to the cell with the date, and then quotations, and then 4 M's. And then you have that. And so you can just drag that down. And then everything else is pretty much done because I've already structured times that they actually got feedback, right, by month. And so the way we do that is go here into cell B2 on February. So super simple with the COUNTIFS equals COUNTIFS column M, highlight the whole column, and then comma, and then true, and then comma, and then month. And then you click on the month here. As far as like the same type of formula, so we want an average if the month is January, right? So give me all these numbers and then take the average if this is January, and then do the same thing for February, same thing for March, but also if this is true, right? Because you might have zeros in this exact example here. So do that, then comma, and then make sure that this is true. So highlight column M, comma, true, comma, and then month, comma. So highlight column B for month, and then you can just type in B3, or you could click there. So we have that. I'm just going to remove some of the zeros or some of the extra characters. And then let's say you have a target of, 4.0. Okay, and then underneath it, I want to do equals this, and then I'm just going to write this down. Okay, so and the reason is because then we can, which is exactly what you want. Then click OK. And then I'll just change the color, just a little bit easier to see. And then I'll call this, maybe average customer satisfaction by month. You can say, if it makes it easier for you, score. Okay, so the little trick I wanted to show you, I'll make this a little bit bigger. So if you wanted to add this data, like say you didn't have it for whatever reason, and then you wanted to add it later, you can just highlight this, press Control C to copy, click on the chart, and then Control V, and now you have that line. And then I'll format this a little bit. I'll double click on the line. I'll click the little paint bucket because I want it to be a little bit thinner. It's just taking up too much real estate here. And then you can click there. You don't really need it to be super thick. You just want to see easily, like, what's the benchmark, or like what was the actual versus the benchmark. And so in this example, it's great, right? Like you're doing great every month, pretty much, except for December. It makes sense. Wintertime here in Texas, super cold. Well, not super cold, but like there's about to be a freeze coming, so it might get really cold. And then if you want to click on the red line because you want the data labels, then you can do that as well. And then you can just sort of see exactly what's happening. But before here, when I said I wanted it to be dynamic, what you can do now is if you type in the number 4, you can see it's not, like now you're not looking so good, right? So you might have a different benchmark, maybe 3.7, right? And so you can see that way, how are you doing, to where you can do a little bit of a sensitivity analysis, have a little dynamic range right there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is, okay, we can get the average real quick. So average, so here it's just the sum, even though it says average, but it's the sum of this. An average if S, average this, where this is true. And you don't even need to use quotations. It's just a habit because it's text, but because only with the words true and false, you don't need to do that. And so it's probably going to be pretty close to this average, if I had to guess. Yeah, but you can see it's not exactly the same. So usually with things like this, it's better to not take an average of the averages, even though in this example it doesn't really matter that much. But okay, so moving along. So now we want to do the exact same thing, but by technician. So it gets a little bit more complex because we're going to have 4 criteria. I guess 3 criteria here. So there is a way to paste in transpose. So I'll show you what I mean. But because this can't be alphabetical, it makes it a little bit different. But like, say for example, you wanted these pasted in a row. Just highlight whatever range you wanted to be transposed, and then right click and then ST, and then it'll paste it across. So you could do that if you wanted to. I just wanted to sort of have this like chronological, right? Spring, summer, fall, winter. Okay, so now let's think about this formula. So average if as. So again, we want to get the average of the score if it's true and the season is spring and the technician is Anthony. So it sounds a little bit more complex than it is, but we want to use the average if S. Average if, you can see here, is only a single criteria. Average if Anthony, average if spring, but we want spring and Anthony and true in the column, right? So average if S. So first things first, we want to average the range. So the first argument is where are the numbers at that you want to average? Because in this example, it's the score, but maybe it's revenue, right? Maybe it's expenses, maybe it's different values. And so it's just with average if S and sum if S, you're going to want to to use the numbers first. Next thing we want to do is we want to click on column M, comma, and then the word true, comma, and then for season, comma, and then we want to do spring, comma, and then finally we want to do the technician, which is in cell B21. So if you know that, you can just highlight technician, and then, but as I drag it top to bottom, I don't want the seasons to change. And so you can do what's called absolute and relative references. And so that's just using dollar signs. And then if you copy, see if I know what I'm talking about. And so we're good here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this just so I can shading, and then you can do color scales, and then you have a heat map here. And so this shows you high and low values. Here it's a little bit different. The way that I did it, as you can see, I did 3 different levels. So between 3.5 and 3.8, a certain color, less than 3.5 red, greater than 3.8 green. But for this one, I'll just do it like this because it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to see high and low values, this one's good. The problem with this one, which is that you like maybe 3.8 isn't that good. Like meaning it shouldn't be green. Maybe it should be a little bit more yellow, like something like this, like an orangish color or something, like this one here. But this is where for me this is and my clients this is more useful, or it's more powerful, I guess, not necessarily more useful. And so what we want is we want anything below a certain value to turn red. And so I'm just going to type in a value here, 3.5. And so then you can just highlight that range, go to, let me just remove a 0 for now, or a decimal place, and then go to home, conditional formatting, and then highlight cell rules less than, and then click on this cell. And then now you have a dynamic 2.5, right? And so nothing's below 2.5, 3, you get 1, 3.25, right? And so the last thing I want to show is how to make this sort of so like your team can understand what to do. Your team will understand what it means, like the word benchmark here. Because if we type benchmark and then we need to tell Excel like, hey, I want this to be formatted as a number, but I want to add some words to it just to help with navigating and just to help with people understanding what that you need to do any of this is to make sure your people are getting your techs or even your customer service people are going to be getting the score 0.9 in spring, and then you're 4.1 in winter, right? Or you could be like, hey, Jason, what are you doing differently than Anthony because you're 4.2 and he's 2.9. So yeah, so this is just one KPI, a couple ways to show it. And so yeah, so if you have any questions about it, shoot me an email, questions@databoards.io. If you want this file, the link is in the description to download it. And if you need some help, structuring or organizing your data to get it in a usable format, there's a link to where you can hop on my calendar. We can hop on a call, or you can shoot me an email. And if you do want this file, if you can't find it and you want the file and you email me, just make sure you tell me, what file it is. Hey, can you give me the file from the customer satisfaction video? But yeah, that's all I got